an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Episode 11, Miracle at Rush Valley. In this episode, Ed gets his pocket watch stolen, and it turns into a whole thing, and the girl who stole it isn't even sorry. Not really. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Max, if you are out there, what's up, bud? So this episode, guys, I just have to start this out by saying that I said at the last episode, the end of it, the fact that our friends did not yet know that Hughes was dead was always a bummer when things ended like that, because you knew that you were going to have to deal with further aftermath of the death of a beloved character the next episode. Turns out we didn't at all deal with that. Our friends are not aware that that has happened. Which one might say, oh, well, that's good. But no, because this means we're just going to have to deal with it later. Whether it's the next episode or the one after, I have no idea the way that communication works for the most part in this world. Like, we have phones, but the overall, like, sort of setting feels to me as if we're looking at, like, 1920s, 30s sort of, like, technology. I don't know how, like, available phones are. And I don't know whether, like, the teacher that they're going to see would have a phone. So I don't know if they will be able to be told until they get back, or if they left an address that they could be found at and somebody will send a telegram or something. Like, do they have telegrams? I don't even know. So it could be quite a while before they actually find out, and I hate it. I truly do. This is just going to be so drawn out, and I'm so sad, because I, like, the one thing too is that Winry spent the night at Hughes's house a few days in a row. So it would be, like, bad enough for her to find out because she had started to, like, kind of grow close to his daughter, but she won't even, like, be with Ed and Al when they find out. So I have no idea when Winry finds out. You know, that feels like it's ages away. If ever we see it, it might just be something that happens, like, off camera. I don't know. And, she was the one that I was the most anxious about how she would react. I know Al will be devastated because he's a sweet little cinnamon roll, but Ed feels like somebody who would be, like, upset by it, but then he would, like, mask it with anger, because that's, like, the masculine emotion. That's why I said mask it. You get it? You see what I did? That was definitely on purpose and not a complete coincidence. So I just don't look forward to dealing with this in the future. And I resent being put in the position where I know about what's going on and my friends don't. I don't like it. I'm just going to say it. All right. So now let's move on to what actually happens this episode instead of only talking about what does not happen this episode. So we start off already in the land of Automail. I can't really unlearn, and I think that probably this will be resolved once I've gotten more into the series. But as of right now, when I hear Automail, all I can think is, like, email. It just sounds like, or MailChimp, where you automatically send out an update that's been scheduled. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, I keep having to sort of remind myself what this actually means, because it feels like a weird choice. And probably that has something to do with it being a translation. But like I said, I'm sure that once I get more used to it, it will not seem quite as weird for me. And Winry is dancing around, so excited, absolutely enraptured by everything that she is seeing around her. And this is like, you know, there's times like this for people who are sort of creative, but they come from a smaller town that doesn't have as many resources, and then they go somewhere that has all kinds of stuff. And I remember when I first started to get pretty into cooking, and I went to some like restaurant supply store in, I think it was Chelsea in New York City, and I spent so much money, you guys. They had all this stuff. And it was kind of before Amazon became like the go-to anytime you needed anything. So I was looking for all of these different types of equipment that I had used in pastry and baking school, or that I had seen referenced in pastry and baking school, but my school didn't even stock that piece of equipment. And they had all this stuff, and I went fucking nuts. And I bought like, it was like one of those rolls that you put your knives in, and a series of like graduated sized cookie cutters in round, in star shape, and in square. And I got like these particular like weird, I think it might have been like a Madeleine cookie sheet, something like this. All of these things that, I mean, probably I could have found them somewhere else, but I had never really known where to look. And I just completely was in my element. And I remember I was there with Brendan and his friend, and they were both just like chilling outside of the store and waiting for me to be done because they were so bored. And you had to drag me out. Like I wasn't ready to go by the time I left. I just wound up being convinced because I had spent all the money I had. So it was kind of like, well, what's the point in staying? And I kept trying to rationalize it, and there was no reason to stay. So the only thing about this that sort of bugged me, I bet you guys can probably guess what it is. Winry is literally the only woman to be seen in any direction except for Panini, who is the pickpocket. And Panini is, I mean, it doesn't even necessarily feel like she's as much a part of this community. It feels like she's kind of an outcast because of the way that she behaves. And I'm just going to keep calling her that, BT Dubs. And I just was like, are we really still doing this? I was so delighted to have a female character who was the one making all the automail to begin with, and really was like pleasantly surprised by that, because so often we just associate mechanics with men. And you know, to a point, that's because women are just treated like they shouldn't be interested, or it's taken for granted that we aren't interested. And for me, I am not interested. But there are a lot of women who are, and are discouraged, actively discouraged, because of the male presence in that universe. So I felt like, oh, nice, we're doing something a little bit unexpected here. Especially, no offense, but sometimes manga can be misogynistic. Like, we know this. So something that is created from a manga, like, and don't get me wrong, even if it's written by a woman, like, doesn't matter. It can still happen. So I was just, not really sure what to expect with that. And it just really was like so frustrating. The camera turns in every direction, and you don't see a single female anywhere. It's not until Panini like pokes her head out in the midst of a crowd because she's about to pick his fucking pocket that you see any indication that women exist in this town at all. So it is irritating. However, it is pretty fun that Ed winds up getting basically swamped by everybody because they are fascinated by the automail that she made. So obviously her work is really good, like enough to impress all of these guys who are very familiar with automail. So I found that to be kind of fun. And they wound up basically like stripping Ed in the middle of the street in order to see it more. And I don't blame Ed for being like so mad about this. Dude, can you imagine? Like, this is actually, it's kind of interesting to me that later on in the episode, there is a pregnant woman it winds up being very significant. But there is a moment where Al asks if he can put his hand on her belly. And guys, I have been around pregnant women. I have never been one of them, but I have been around pregnant women and watched as complete and total strangers walked up to them and put their hand on this complete fucking stranger's stomach out of nowhere. No asking for permission, treating this woman because she is pregnant as if she is somehow now public property and no longer like a person. Like, you would never walk up to anybody and just lay your hand on a body part of theirs and like gaze in wonder in their eyes. You would never do that, except people do it with pregnant women all the time. Because once women are pregnant, we're just like not important anymore. It's not about us anymore. It's just not. That's just how it goes. I was so pleased that they have Al actively asking permission, especially in light of what happens to Ed with him getting like undressed by everybody because they just want to see his automail, and they're sort of treating him like he's not a person, like he's like a robot or something. It was like, I felt almost like it was a sort of acknowledgement of that, but I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but just the fact that his boundaries were so completely violated with nobody giving a shit about him as a person. And then to have this woman treated with respect in the way that one should be. I just appreciated those juxtapositions. I just maintain anyone who walks up to a woman and begins to place their stomach on her, or their hand on her pregnant stomach, I don't understand how you can have been raised that way. What goes through your head that makes you think that is appropriate? And like I said, I saw it happen a lot. In various jobs I've had, there were pregnant women around me, and I have asked before because they would act as if it didn't bother them in the moment. And I would say after the person walked away, like, doesn't that bother you? And they would be like, oh yeah, but at this point I've sort of gotten used to it because so many people do it that I don't want to make a scene about it anymore. How sad is that? That like, it is so common for that to happen that you feel you have to adjust your own personal boundaries to make room for these like incredibly disrespectful people rather than making them adjust to the fact that you aren't comfortable with a stranger putting their hands on you. Truly, like, our whole world, what is it? What are we doing? I want to know. Like, 'cause there has to be some explanation. Anyway, so as he is getting dressed, and Winry is getting questioned by all these dudes, and Al has a group of people around him that are like asking about what's going on with him. This one, I had wondered if they were going to do anything with that, and they don't. But I thought maybe, like, everybody is, like, wondering what's going on with Ed to the degree that they actively begin to, like, disrobe him against his will. I was like, are they going to do that with Al and then find out that there's, like, nothing inside his suit of armor and freak out? Because I kind of thought that might be where we were going to go with this. It does not come up. It does not seem to be. They're just like sort of touching the outside of the armor. And I will admit I was relieved. Like, you could play that for drama and I wouldn't be mad at you for it. But I feel like Al just goes through so much due to not having a body. I don't, like, if we can avoid him being the center of attention from that, I would appreciate it. You know, I need Al to have a break. Every few episodes, he can be at the center of a problem. But then we need to, like, back off and give him some space for a little while. So this is when Ed reaches into his pockets and realizes that his watch is gone. And Al and Winry completely, like, this episode is rife with the extreme reaction panels. And sometimes they feel completely appropriate. And sometimes I'm like, this feels like a bit of an overreaction to the situation. And then there are times where I'm like, I really don't even think I understand what just happened. And that was how I felt at one point. when Ed is called a flea, he has a reaction panel that looks like his face on a bunch of sperms. What is that supposed to mean? I don't get it. Is it supposed to be like a sperm is the tiniest possible part, like living part of a person? Because like that's not exactly true, actually. But it just it's a fucking it's a sperm, like it's a series of them wiggling like they're on a petri dish with his face on them. I don't... Damien says fleas. Those were not fleas, my friend. I will screen share with you when I get there. Candace says they're little ghosts, I think. Okay, well, I thought the ghost that was coming out of what's-her-name's mouth when she's in the library was a sperm. So I suppose this could be ghosts also. But I don't understand why there's so many of them and they're packed in next to each other, because they just look like sperm. They have to know that, right? Sperm look the same no matter what language you speak. So when you put a bunch of them together and have their tails all wiggling frantically, you have to really know what that looks like. Come on. Don't play dumb with me. Taking a sip of my cider. I'm going to do that every time I want to emphasize my point. Satyagi says, or all his cells are upset. Honestly, if that's what it is, I don't know what to do with that either. If we're going to show people being upset at a cellular level, I guess I just have to adjust. I guess I'll just have to get on board with that. Anyway, Damien says ghost art of that style in Japan predates that, I think. Predates sperm, Damien? If you say so. Alright, so this is when the locals come up and they're like, oh, it sounds like Panini Press Picture Pocket. We know all about her. And she gets everybody at some point. And Ed is like, oh, well, she took something like super important from me. Do you know where I can find her? And these two dudes are like, I wonder where she is. I know something that might jog my memory. And then I thought that they were going to want money. Of course, that's what I thought. It turns out, no, they just want Ed to let them look at his armor a little bit more closely. And they each like turn around and they have wrenches and socket wrenches and stuff in their hands. And Ed's reaction on this one, I'm going to screen share this with you because I really enjoyed this one particularly. He is towering over them with like a great deal of shading, and his like blade has come out of his forearm, and it is a lot. I'm not saying that we have never seen reactions done like this before in this show, but this one got my attention a lot because of the fact that we're like in amongst strangers and Ed doesn't have his shirt on. So it makes him look simultaneously more threatening, but also like more of a kid somehow. Does that make sense? So yeah, he is instructed to go to this place owned by a guy named Dominic. And as they are walking, it basically is like they are taking a hike through like the Grand Canyon is the vibe of this place. And they've been walking for long enough that Winry is like, did they fuck with us? Is this actually the right way? Or what are we, did we fall for something here? And then all of a sudden they see a woman running across a bridge, and she is holding his, watch in her hands. And we get this series of like columns that Ed pulls up out of the ground to allow him to cross without even having to go to the bridge. And there are a variety of things that he does here using his ability. He creates a wall so that she can't get past. He uses like the ground to turn into hands to try and grab her. And everything that he does, she's like, that's awesome. What the fuck? How did you do that? And honestly, I was just saying this in the One Piece episode. I have a real like soft spot for bad guys who acknowledge that the good guy is actually pretty fucking dope. You know, it's fun. I like it. Like you want that validation, right? You want the bad guy to not be like, ugh, you absolute idiot. You suck. Look at how pathetic you are. Tired. It's tired. You know what's wired? Bad guy being like, that is rad. Will you show me that again? What did you do? I am so into it. So, she winds up getting caught in a fucking amazing giant cage that Ed and Al, well, Ed builds around her, but Al, I think, is the one who drew that like transmutation circle on the ground for her to run into, because he says, I've been waiting for you. I don't know if that's true, but I think so, because like, okay, so actually I didn't really stop to ask this question, and it kind of startles me now that I stop and think about it, that I didn't ask. But Ed and Al were both studying alchemy. Was Al also an alchemist, and it's just like when he lost his body, he couldn't do it anymore? Or was he just like not as good at it as his brother? Or what? It never even occurred to me that if Al got his body back, he could be an alchemist in his own right. And I don't think that he would necessarily be as good as Ed is, because Ed had that little trip to the fucking far end of the universe where he got to see all of the truths of magic, almost. So I'm assuming that Ed has more knowledge to work with, and that's just going to give him the edge. But I just never stopped to really think about it. I'm thinking of Al as like the kid, and Ed as the one who was doing all of the alchemy. And Ed was sort of like just taking Al along for the ride with him. And now I'm realizing like that's just not based in anything. We actively saw them both studying alchemy, like from books with each other. So never even thought of it. Kyle says Al can do alchemy. Get it. He just can't do it in the special way that Ed can. Okay, yeah, that's right. Gus says, we've seen Al do alchemy, but he needs circles, which implies alchemy is bound to the soul rather than the body. We've seen Al do alchemy in this body? Have we? How do I not remember that? I don't remember that. And I'm not arguing at all, but it's just, I just can't believe I don't even recall an instance of that. What a dope. Okay. So, moving along, it turns out that this girl had been sort of mentored by this particular dude who is really gifted at making automail. And Winry is so stoked because the girl manages to escape that cage by using automail that has like a blade in one of the shins, because she lost both of her legs from like the knees down, I think. And she has a cannon, I believe, in the other shin, which she had to like lift her leg in such a way to shoot that looked so awkward and funny to me. And I know I was just watching something with Owen where a guy had like a similar weapon where he needed to, like, it was coming out of his knee somehow. I can't remember what it was. And I like laughed out loud when the guy did it. And I did the same thing with her. And that is not to say it's not an effective weapon, because that's some good shit. But it looks weird to me to have to sort of do a flamingo-esque type pose in order to get it going. Winry gets her to let her take a look at what's going on with her legs. And I love this because the girl is so weirded out by the fact that Winry is delighted with this work that none of them has even thought to fucking get Ed's watch back. And Ed is just sitting there like, really? Are you... Nobody's gonna just... That's the whole reason we're here. What... Hi, I'm still okay. It's honestly really funny to me. So at this point, she starts congratulating this dude that's standing there for his amazing work. And he's like, oh, I didn't make those. He did. And this dude walks in who's got very strong, like, I'm trying to think. He's got like the energy of, Ron Perlman, I could see being cast as this dude, somebody who's just kind of over it. You know, he's definitely has like a warm side hidden in there somewhere, but for the most part, he's just like, ugh, this shit again, you know? And he is looking at Ed's arm and says, maybe this heavy attachment is what's stunting his growth. And initially, Ed is like real offended. And then he quickly jumps to like, wait, do you mean if my armor was lighter, my automail was lighter, I might grow more? And this dude is like, it's certainly possible. And he then has this amazing vision, and I'm still screen sharing, so I'm going to let it roll, of himself towering over Al and Winry. And honestly, guys, have you ever had these like daydreams and then realized how like childish it is in the moment? Oh man, it's such a like, it feels like I'm in an 80s movie sometimes. I'll have like this absolute fantasy of like karate chopping somebody, you know? And then I come back to myself and I'm like, wow, I really had that fucking fantasy of karate chopping somebody just now. Wow, I am still 10 years old somewhere inside. Like, that is not going away. So I am not going to hold this against Ed at all, because we all have our particular thing that we are very self-conscious about and would really love to just magically change. And one cannot help but indulge for a moment or two, imagining what it looks like for that thing to have been magically fixed and how much better life would be, of course, because that's the whole thing. You attach most of your hardships in life to that one thing that you're self-conscious about, so that when you fix it, your life is fixed. That's how that works, right? Absolutely correct. Thank you. I will not be taking questions. So, yeah, this whole moment is so good to me, and he is so excited. Do you guys see him? He's like got like Cupid's dancing around his head that he's reaching for. Oh my God, it's so funny. So this is when Winry asks this Ron Perlman looking dude to make her his apprentice. And he immediately says, not a chance, girl. And the animation here has her go into total black and white because of her, like, being let down. And there are just some things with animation that if you try to really explain why they work, it's, like, so hard to do. But her being black and white after being utterly rejected is completely correct. I don't know if we have seen this in this show, because there have been so many, like, you know, moments of sort of interpretive art for like the reactions that people have, but I don't remember seeing it. And I just felt that in my heart when I saw her turn black and white. I was like, oh, sweetie, I'm sorry. It just, translates completely. I understood exactly what she was feeling there. Oh, man. So, yeah, she asks him, like, well, you want some time to, like, think it over? And he's like, no, I don't do that. And he just flat out says he doesn't take apprentices. Ed, maybe you could take some time out of your busy schedule to teach her how to make automail that makes me taller. And this is when he says, can it, you little flea. And this is when we have, do you guys see this? I'm showing them, everybody, this like weird sperm art. I feel like it's a sperm. I don't know. It's just like, there's something about the way that his head comes out of it as well. I find it incredibly off-putting. It's like he's an amoeba or something splitting. You know, like a cell that's like multiplying. But, I don't know. I just hate it. Damien says that's a stylized flea. It doesn't look anything like... Fleas don't have tails like that. How? What? Really? That doesn't look like a flea. That doesn't look anything like a flea. That's weird. I don't know, Damien. I'm not sure I buy that. Look, you may be right, but shit did not translate. I'm just saying, if that's what it is. I didn't get it. And yeah, so this guy just like walks out and leaves them there. And then we have the whole thing with this woman who's pregnant. And Ed and Al begin chatting with her, talking about how at one point they were inside their mom's belly like this as well. And then this lady starts to have contractions. And they begin to realize that shit is starting to get real. And meanwhile, Winry is talking to Panini about her legs, and she asks her what happened. And Panini says it was a train accident that killed my parents. I wound up losing both my legs. I couldn't even walk anymore and had nowhere to go. And guys, when she says, I couldn't even walk and I had nowhere to go, she is like weirdly smiling as she says it. And look, I get that the story's about to turn a corner and she's going to describe how she got scooped up by this guy who like saved her. But in the moment, her like smiling as she's telling the story, I was like, what is wrong with you? What is going on? It was just so weird to me. And so when it turns the corner, I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. This is like, in a way, it becomes sort of a heartwarming memory. But in the moment, I was just like, there's a part, I don't know how many of you guys watch those like claymation Christmas specials, but I grew up watching Santa Claus is Coming to Town. That was like the one in our household that we watched because the Rudolph one is like really depressing and kind of fucked up. And the Frosty the Snowman one, is that the other one? There's another one that I just like never saw until I was older. And there's a part in that claymation where all the kids are gathered and they all start crying because their toys are being burned in the village square. And, you know, they're using these like little posable dolls because it's a claymation, and they don't change their facial expressions very much if they can help it because it's so much time. And so unless they are like a main character, the claymation's faces aren't even really like adjustable. You know, you have to be one of the big players in order to have the option to have a smiling face or an angry face or whatever. And so in that crowd, all these kids are like sobbing, crying because their toys are being burned. And then this girl like looks up from her hands and she's got this like ear to ear grin on her face. And I knew even as a kid, it was just because that was how the doll looked and they didn't bother. But I was always like, why would you have her be the one that lifts her face up? Like, just make a doll that doesn't have a giant smiling face and have them be the one. it was almost like she was in on it because her smile, it felt like she was pretending to cry, but she was really the narc that had reported all of the kids, you know? It just was so distracting. So anyway, that is what this made me think of, because her smile in this moment just felt wholly inappropriate. And we get to see, like, this dude, this little girl who has no legs and no parents. And she's just, like, in the alley, sad, with her abandoned wheelchair behind her. And this guy is walking past, and he stops and looks at her and says, "You look like the most miserable, pathetic girl in the entire world. Nothing annoys me more than mopers like you." And he picks her up and takes her away. And I'm like, look, I get that in the end, it was for the good. Telling a kid who just went through a terrible tragedy and has lost mobility and become disabled that they annoy you because they're moping isn't really the move. Just saying. Oh my God. I truly, you guys, who does that? I mean, what am I saying? Like, an entire fucking political party in the United States does this. Oh my God, but seriously, what? I shouldn't find it this funny, but it just was like, it was so not how I expected the scene to go. I thought it was going to be like, because again, she's like smiling. So it's supposed to be a good memory, but even the good memory is of somebody being a dickhead to her, you know? Like, it just feels, I don't know. Whatever. And she says that he told her that she had the eyes of a dead person, which was probably pretty true. So without asking my opinion, I was outfitted with Automail legs. The surgery and the rehabilitation were painful, by far the hardest thing I'd ever done. He didn't even ask her permission. Men. But she gets through it. She's finally able to walk around. She's so delighted. And then what does she do? She turns to a life of crime. It's so funny. She's saying, I owe him everything. I'm going to pay him back somehow. He has never been willing to take money, so that makes it harder. And Winry is like, oh, so that's why you're a thief. And I was like, okay, wait. So her plan to pay this man back is to steal everybody in town's money to the point where you are a notorious pickpocket. That everybody knows you are the pickpocket. You were literally picked up by name. It's not even like you have like some cool code name, like, oh, the white fox got you. She got into your pocket. No, they literally named you immediately. That is how clearly you are identified by everybody. So that the guy who took you in and helped you out will be seen to have like low-key raised a thief. And then you are going to try and make him take the money that he has literally never agreed to take since you have tried to give it to him for what I am assuming is years now. So you're stealing this money and piling it into like a giant piggy bank somewhere and just shoving the piggy bank into his hands once a month, and he just keeps pushing it back, and you just take it home and keep filling it up thinking, well, next month I'll get him. Girl, think this through. Winry telling you, how about you clean up your act and stop being a piece of shit thief, should not come as a surprise. It's pitiful. Your whole plan is pitiful. If you actually had to pay him back and you were doing this, fine. You know, if he was like, all right, now you owe me 200,000 credits. Honestly, I wouldn't put that past him because he seems like he sucks, but he doesn't want money, clearly. This is not the way. What are you doing? I'm just saying, like, a bunch of, like, Mandalorian, Star Wars shit. Think it through. This is not the way. So anyway, she's like, yells at her and is like, this was a selfless act of goodwill. And, like, I guess it is, but also I just can't handle this guy being such an asshole. So at this point, Winry is in the middle of lecturing this girl, and they get interrupted by Ed coming in, trying to tell them that the baby is coming. Which I'm really wondering, did they know that there was a pregnant woman sitting outside? I think they saw her, right? I think she was standing in the yard when they first got there. And y'all, I forgot about this being the moment. Panini is like, well, if I'm going to abandon my life of crime, I better give your friend his watch back. I cannot believe that we are this far into this encounter and she had still not given Ed his watch back, first of all. Second of all, I cannot believe that Winry's first instinct on realizing that this watch doesn't open is to force it open in front of the girl who stole it from him. What is with people? Honestly, I mean, Christ. I would even, like, kind of forgive Winry if she forced it open by herself, because she was just super curious and it was her all alone. That would be, like, understandable. This bitch picked his pocket. And now you're about to, like, expose this shit even further. It's super gross. And I was so glad that Ed later is like, you forced it open? And thankfully, Winry looks properly ashamed of herself. Because I was just disgusted in this moment. Like, who knows what's inside it, too? It turns out to be a date, which is meant to be, like, a reminder for him. And it's the date, if I'm not mistaken, that he burned his house down and, like, said goodbye. If I'm not, like, because that's what she's remembering when she's thinking back to that date. But I had thought that it was the date that his mother died or that he tried to bring her back or something. But I think it's the date that he burned it to the ground. But Damien says, I don't think she realized it was sealed shut. She absolutely did. Look, she says, let me see. Don't worry, it wasn't you. It's been sealed up using alchemy. And then, I think I have a good idea why. Sometimes he's too embarrassed. Something's in there that he's too embarrassed to let anyone see. And she pulls out a bunch of tools and actively goes to work after stating very specifically that she knows nobody would want, like, he wouldn't want anybody to see it. Oh. I am disgusted, truly. Like, also, like, this just gets to one of those, like, those low-level fears that you have, especially as, like, a young girl, I think, because girls tend to get gifted with things like diaries more often than boys are, because we're encouraged to, like, explore our feelings, and guys aren't. And a lot of those, like, come with a little lock on them. And, you know, as a kid, even, like, I understood you can just pop that lock with, like, a butter knife a lot of the time. So it was the kind of thing where I wanted to, like, write in it and feel secure that I was putting something in a place where nobody could see it. But there's always that sort of paranoia that somebody can come in and read it and do so very easily and you wouldn't know. So it just was a little bit like somebody going and reading your diary a tiny bit, you know? So anyway, yeah, this is, oh, that's right. And then we get Fullmetal Alchemist, and we have Panini posing like a pinup model with her, her Automail leg, which is pretty funny, to be honest. All right. So this is when we have the girl, going into labor, and it's like a thunderstorm, absolutely pouring. Because they're in a sort of remote location, there's no way to get her to a hospital. So eventually, Winry decides to take the situation in hand. And this is the kind of thing that I think about all the time, because I love contemplating extremely stressful situations because I have anxiety, and it's my way of coping prematurely with things that probably will never happen, but they might happen. So I should be prepared for it. And I genuinely do not think I could do it. Good for you, Winry. Proud of you. Not proud of you for the other thing, but kind of make up for it here. But truly, guys, I have never been present for a birth. I have never given birth. I have never watched a video of a birth. A lot of people had to watch that for like health class in school. They did not do that with us. I do not think I could do it. That is some, to quote Gina Linetti from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that is some messed up Animal Kingdom nonsense. Could not be me. Good luck. And I'm going to get as far away from it as possible. It's like such a combination of things. First of all, you are going to, one, have to look at somebody's private parts that you probably are not wanting to look at. Two, the private parts are going to be in a state that is even less appealing than what they would be normally. Three, so much blood. So much blood. Four, other bodily functions. Five, complications. God only knows what could happen. Six, let's say no complications and the baby just comes out. I truly do not know what to do after that. I know that you like cut the umbilical cord, but I don't know how you like, do you tie a knot and cut it? How do you, ew. Okay. You know what? I'm sorry. I don't even want to think about it. And then the care for the woman after the birth, genuinely no idea. I mean, it sounds like a horror show. You might have to give like stitches. Oh my God. Guys, this is why I've never wanted to have children to begin with, and helping somebody else get through it. It's, if it's me going through it, that's bad enough. I'm surrounded hopefully by professionals who actually know what they're doing, and that's still a nightmare. But watching somebody else go through it, and I'm sort of like responsible for what happens to them, and I really can't help in any substantial way because I don't know what I'm doing, that is like a true nightmare. No. Not excited about it. I don't like this. So they leave and just sort of like walk around kind of, and by they, I mean Ed and Al, and they're feeling completely helpless, which they are. And I love this so much. Ed comes in and he sees that the baby is here, and he just starts saying, "Hey, it's a baby! Hooray! A real live baby! Awesome, awesome, awesome!" And truly, that is so hilarious to me. Winry says something like, "That's what you have to say? Awesome." And I was like, honestly, if we're looking at like the original meaning of the word awesome, this is like the most appropriate use of it. Giving birth is awe-inspiring. Like, that shit's cray. And so, I side with Ed on this one. And he says something at one point about how, oh yeah, I mean, like, you know, alchemists have been trying for years to create life and we can't do it. And here it is. And she's like, are you comparing the miracle of life and giving birth to alchemy? And he's like, yeah, I mean, that's how my mind works. What? And I couldn't even really be like mad at him for that because I get it. You know, this is the sort of thing that I think drives so much science fiction out there, is that we can have sci-fi that like helps us do a bunch of things that we already do with tech. We can do it better in the future or with like more advanced technology or whatever. But there's always that like subplot of, and then they went too far. They were so concerned with trying to find out if they could. They didn't stop to think about if they should. And I totally understand. Of course he would think about this, you know? I mean, considering what's happened to him and the price that he has had to pay and what he was trying to accomplish when he did it, it makes sense to me. I get it. But Winry also, God only knows what she went through with this. She's like, you know, covered in blood. The kid's got blood and she's super exhausted and probably just doesn't have a lot of patience at the moment. So, yeah, I'm not mad at Winry either for that. Oh my God, guys, look at Al dancing around in the background with his little hands pressed together. He is so cute. Oh, why is Al so cute, you guys? I would love a little robot that looks like the chibi version of Al, not the regular version, because that's like, honestly, a little robot that looks like that is kind of scary. But a robot that looks like the chibi version would be the best. So guys, there is a moment here, and I meant to ask this, and you'll see it in a second. Ed asks if there's anything he can do, and Winry says, yeah, there is. Can you please pick me up? And a sign in Japanese points to her, and I don't know what it says. But if anybody knows of a translation, this actually just happened in One Piece as well. There's like a little title card that comes up, and there is no translation for it. So somebody had to tell me what it said. But I am very curious what that is. Is that like a joke? Or does it just say like, she's very tired? I honestly don't know anything about how Japanese characters work. I have never looked into that, so I'm kind of curious. Maybe I should, now that I'm like watching several things in which Japanese comes up frequently. Oh my God! Damien says exhausted or unable to stand. Oh my God, I thought it said exhausted. That was my guess. Oh my God, I love that. I think that was what was shown on the dub version. This is the dub version, but it's not doing that. Is it? Or did I miss it? Oh, it didn't show for me, but it might show like in another version of the dub. I'm sure they've got like different, you know how this stuff goes. So yeah, she's just so tired that she literally needs him to carry her out of there. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I wish I could have just asked Owen to pick me up and carry me. Oh, that would be great. And this is when she tells him that she opened the watch and he drops her and she deserved it. You know you do, Winry. Like, she says that hurt, but she doesn't even like keep yelling at him about it because she fucking knows that she deserved it. Oh, Damien says, I think that was on the dub version. The DVD subtitles shows up alongside the signage. Oh, so the DVDs have a different thing going on than the... Interesting. Okay. Huh. And they have this talk about what it is that he was like trying to do here with reminding himself about what was at stake, what he went through. And I love this. She starts crying. And he says, Winry, why are you doing that? And I don't know why, but asking somebody, why are you crying? By looking at them and saying, why are you doing that? Is hilarious to me. That felt like some like Third Rock from the Sun shit. The first time she ever starts crying, Sally just like touches her eye and looks at it and says, "I'm leaking," which, I mean, that's essentially what is happening. So, and Winry is basically like, well, I was there when you burned the house down and you didn't cry and you're not crying now. So I guess like somebody has to cry. So anyway, you probably should go back because Granny's probably lonely without you. And Winry is like, no, I saw like what it is that you're working on and the fact that you feel so committed to what you're doing. And it made me feel like I really should push myself more. So I'm not going to go back right away. And I'm going to figure out some way to continue to learn here. And she says, I'm going to try again with Dominic. And it turns out that the woman who gave birth was Dominic's daughter, which, it was his daughter, right? Is that who it was? And I didn't even like think about it at the time. But once she says, I'm going to try again, I was like, oh, you like got this woman through labor. He is definitely going to feel like he owes you. And, yeah, that is essentially what happens. He agrees to take her on. Oh my God, you guys, I just realized because I'm having this like play in the shared tab. Ed just yelled at Panini for her to give him his watch back. I didn't realize, even now, Winry has not gotten his watch away from Panini to give to him. Bitch, you're gonna fucking tell him you forced it open and looked at the inside with this total stranger thief. And you're not even gonna fucking have it on your person to return to him when you tell him about this? Like, truly, what is the matter with you? At least wait for him to get that shit back. Like, oh my God, I would be so mad. I just would. So yeah, he winds up like bonking her on the head and screaming at her, and she deserves it. So I love this. They go into the room and Dominic is like, oh, who's your little cutie? Who's your little cutie baby? And Ed is in the corner like, well, that's weird because this guy has been such a fucking stoic rock. And yeah, this is when Winry is like, there's no need to thank me. You're making me blush. And this is when Ed is like, maybe you could make an exception and take on this apprentice. And Dominic actually keeps saying no, which I didn't think he would do. I thought he would definitely take her on at this point. I never expected that this would not work. It didn't even enter my head that it would not work. It was a fucking guarantee in my mind. So when he's like, oh, no, I'm absolutely not changing my mind on that. That's not changing. It's not even related. I was like, what? But that's not how it goes. Oh my God. So then he says, but I do know a really accomplished engineer that I can recommend you to. And Winry is like, well, can I at least like come by and like watch you work sometimes? And he is like, yeah, you can, but you're coming by officially to see the baby. And I was like, all right, this has clearly gone too far, sir. What happened to you to make you this resistant to the concept of having, something happened. There's no reason for him to be this fucking rigid about it, to even the point that if she comes to visit, she has to pretend it's for the baby and not to watch him work. Like, who hurt you? Something happened. So we have these boys running to catch the train because it's the last one for 3 days to get to where they have to go to see their teacher. And on the way out, they pass 3 wanted posters. And we've got 3 types here. The first dude looks like a bruiser. This is somebody who looks like he was in prison. He made 80% of the population his bitch in one way or another. And he escaped prison and is continuing to make people his bitch outside of prison. We have the second guy who is smiling deviously. And that is a man who gets an erection when he beats people up. That man is unwell. I don't like his face. And I hope they catch him. And then the third guy is like, it looks like he's balding, but also he has like a mohawk. Very weird hairstyle. These tiny little mustaches that flare to each side like a Looney Tunes villain. There's a sort of Snidely Whiplash look to him. And he is in uniform. I don't know what kind of uniform that is. But the other two are wearing what looks like civilian clothing. I said that the first guy kind of looked like he was from prison, and I think I was influenced by the look of his outfit, which seems almost like to be the collar of a prison jumpsuit, but I don't think it is. I think it's just like made me think of that. The second guy, who definitely gets an erection when he beats people up, has like a line across his throat, and I can't tell if it's like because of an actual scar or if he has like a tattoo or what. Oh, Gus says the first guy is Scar, and everybody is agreeing. Is it? That does not look like Scar to me. I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe you guys, but like, if I saw that wanted poster and I saw Scar, I would not put it together. This is why I'm not good for shit like this. I don't have that, like, I've recognized this in myself from a few different things, but in situations like this, when you're watching true crime stuff, they'll show like the composite drawing that a witness made with an artist of what the perpetrator looked like. And then they'll show the guy they caught, and the narrators or the cops will say like, he looked exactly like the composite. And I'm like, he does not. What are you talking about? And to me, it's just, there's like fucking no resemblance, but these people are saying there is. So I feel like I have to be in the wrong because I'm definitely in the minority, you know? But yeah, this is like, I didn't ever put it together that was supposed to be him. It just doesn't look like him to me. Maybe it's the fact that he's not in color, but I don't know. Damien says, I'm still disappointed that they brushed past You Swell in this version. Oh, I don't know who that. They only have descriptions to go by, not a picture like the last guy. Gus says it's like a pencil sketch that's not quite right. Yeah, maybe it's the fact that it's just a pencil sketch that makes it feel like that's not the dude. But I would never have guessed. Like, I appreciate you guys pointing it out. Maybe it's also the fact that he's not wearing glasses. Because he was wearing glasses a lot of the time when he was fighting, right? So I think maybe that's part of it as well, is that he isn't wearing them. And I know that he wasn't wearing them in like the flashback, but even so, the flashback that he had, I put down as sort of like an exception to his usual look because, you know, it was like a war zone or something. So yeah, I just didn't even like realize that. The middle guy, because of his smile, there's a vibe to him of the one that was like the state alchemist who was very excited to like burn the fucking place down. But he has short hair, and that guy had long hair even then, I think. So, and that third guy, no idea. No idea. Might have been told, like mentioned before, but I have no idea. So, all right, I have to wrap up. But thank you guys very much for coming and hanging out with me. And thank you, Max, for commissioning this episode. I hope that all of you are enjoying the coverage. And I will see you hopefully on Friday with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.